COVID represented to this government. They have attempted to amplify and take advantage of every pain, every fear, every tragedy that has struck throughout this pandemic in order to divide one person against another and replace the people's freedom with the government's power. Now, at the beginning of the pandemic, it started immediately. The government attempted to ram through a law giving it the power to raise any tax to any level for any reason without a vote in Parliament. They tried to pass Bill C-10 to strip away free speech online. Thankfully, Conservatives blocked them for doing so. His authorities have said they want to track Canadian cell phones for the next 5 years. And now this, the Emergency Act, the latest and greatest example of attacks on our freedom. Ostensibly meant to stop blockades that had already ended before he even brought forward this legislation in Alberta, Manitoba, and at the Ambassador Bridge. Peacefully, those blockades were ended in some cases with protesters hugging the police officers and bringing the matters to a successful close so that goods and services could resume. And instead, in that context, the Prime Minister brought in a law that not even Jean Chrétien brought in after 9/11 killed dozens of Canadians in a terrorist attack. Not even Prime Minister Harper brought in when a terrorist murdered a Canadian soldier at the War Monument and came running into the centre block spraying bullets in all directions. And not even this Prime Minister brought in when blockaders were standing in the way of First Nations who were attempting to build the Coastal GasLink pipeline. Yet, for the first time in this law's three-decade history, the Prime Minister brings it in to address what he says was a protest in front of Parliament Hill. Ironically, this power goes beyond any of the protests and/or blockades the Prime Minister claims to want to address. For example, it will allow governments and banks to seize people's bank accounts and money for donating to the wrong political cause. One journalist asked the Justice Minister if small sums donated, for example, to support an end to vaccine mandates, could get someone's bank account frozen. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said such people who make donations of that kind should be, quote, very worried. To freeze someone's bank account is not just an attack on their finances, but on their personal security. If your bank account is frozen, you can't buy food, you can't buy fuel, you can't pay your children's daycare fees, and you can, under this law, face that personal attack without being charged with a single solitary crime. The Prime Minister says that this is time-limited, yet his own Finance Minister said she wants some of the tools to be permanent. He said it will be geographically targeted, yet his own Parliamentary Secretary for Justice said, quote, that the Act technically applies to all of Canada. So the rules apply everywhere and indefinitely. Finally, there's nothing in the Act that limits the number of the kinds of financial actions that could lead someone to have their account frozen. And if they are frozen unjustifiably, the Act specifically bans people from suing either the bank or the government for that unjustifiable treatment, opening the door for people who have nothing whatsoever to do with either the blockades or protests having their bank accounts frozen without cause. Now, the Prime Minister says that he wants to do this to remove the blockades that have already been removed. He says he needs these unprecedented powers in order to restore, to bring our country's order back to the pre-protest period, although across this country that has already occurred. So, Madam Chair, I say to this House that I oppose this unjustifiable power grab, and as Prime Minister of Canada, I will ensure that no such abuse of power ever happens again. But I say that we should end some of these blockades. Let us.
Order.